Let me know when you're ready. Okay, we're ready to go. The time right now is 6:02. I call this meeting to order. Jamie, if you could please start with a roll call.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Mead?
Here.
Ms. Rathburn? Here. Mr. Stresslaw?
Here.
Mr. Wolf?
Present.
Mr. Hagopian?
Here.
And Chair Elfman?
Here. Thank you.
You
We
have
have
a
a quorum. Okay, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Bob?
Okay, rise, please. Flag to your rear. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Does anyone have any changes to the minutes? Changes, corrections? If not, I'll take a motion for approval.
I move we approve. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Objection? Jamie, if you need to roll call that too?
You don't really need to. You can just
Then
do
we
it
won't
voice.
do it.
Okay.
We'll skip that. I just wanted to give you talking time, that's all. Okay, so each member of the public that wishes to speak after each item is presented and discussed will have 3 minutes per the item. Representatives, association, and groups will have 5 minutes. Jamie, I'll let you swear people in.
Anyone intending to speak, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm any testimony you give at this public hearing will be truthful and accurate? Yes. Thanks.
Okay, our case number 241100001, 2950 Southwest 17th Place. If you could please, when you come up there, state your name, relation to the property. And right before you get started, I'm going to ask for disclosures. Milton?
I don't have any.
Fred?
Site visit?
Doug?
Nothing.
Okay, Bob?
None.
Jason?
None.
Pat?
None.
And I had a site visit myself.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is David Isaacson. I'm here representing H&M in a request for a variance due to undue hardship or for special exception for the property located at 2950 Southwest 17th Place in Fort Lauderdale. The issue here is that we need that H&M is seeking a variance due to the landlocked nature of the property. They bought the property after performing due diligence for the development of single-family homes. The property is zoned residential. That's a mistake. It should be 6.85B, which includes for purposes of single-family dwellings. They later learned the property was landlocked and therefore unbuildable because of an ordinance that's 47-24 5D3G, which requires that every lot shall have it or shall abut upon and have a permanent access to a public street. As a result of this hardship, H&M cannot access the property, or at least permanently cannot access the property. And it can't be used for the purposes of building on it, for example, development of single-family homes. So the solution, we thought, was to extend the property here to make it abut a street. Seems simple enough. The problem with that was it ran into another ordinance, the so-called flag ordinance, which prohibits flag-type properties, and that says that side lot lines shall be at substantially right angles to street lines. This being a street line, and obviously these being side lines, which would be at right angles. So we are therefore, H&M is therefore seeking a variance to that flag statute or flag ordinance to allow these lines parallel to be acceptable for purposes of development. There are 5 criteria for variance according to a hardship. They're listed here: special conditions. The special conditions are peculiar to the property at issue. Literal application deprives the applicant of substantial use of the property that is enjoyed by other properties in the zoning district. The unique hardship is not self-created and not the result of ignorance or disregard for the ULDR, or and it's not self-created. And the variance is the minimum that's required to make possible reasonable use of the property. So let's go to the first one, special conditions. The property is landlocked, and as a result, there's no permanent access. H&M may not be able to maintain it because of that. They cannot build on it, and the land has no practical use or value. With respect to the special circumstances, landlocked properties in the zoning district are obviously the exception and not the rule, and very few, if any, of the properties are landlocked and undevelopable, and most are developed. With respect to literal application of the provisions of the UDLR, most of the other properties I said are in the zoning district are developable and developed, and there are other lots, in fact, in the same zoning district which have flag shapes. So other property owners have been allowed to have this sort of a variance or special exception. And here are a few examples. 1924 Southwest 29th Avenue, 2141 Southwest Terrace, and again, 2050 Riverland Road. And in fact, I was looking at this, going over this today. There's one right here, also right around the corner, a flag property that's been allowed. The unique hardship is not self-created. The landlocked nature of the property was not created by the applicant. It was bought that way. That was created long before the applicant ever got it, long before H&M ever purchased it. And it's not the result of mere disregard or ignorance of the provisions of the ULDR. They did significant due diligence. They were told by the seller, the seller's agent, their own realtor, the closing agent, that the property was buildable. Even the city told the buyer, told H&M that the property was buildable. So it's not any result of disregard or lack of due diligence or anything like that. They learned of the landlocked nature actually after the city had told them that it was buildable. Now, the variance is the minimum variance. The flag shape is required to abut a road. Otherwise, there's still a violation of the ordinance. I think it was G. The variance will allow usable development for which the zoning regulations allow. That is single family homes. Without that, they can't even use it for the purpose that the zoning regulation allows, that the ULDR allows. It will not be compatible. It will not be incompatible with adjoining properties. The adjoining properties are all single residences, and this would be the same thing. And there will be safe ingress and egress by an accessible road, and it won't adversely affect travel if it's just a single-family home. There's a second provision, a second argument under which the zoning board or the Board of Adjustment can grant a special exception, where there's allowed under the zoning regulation or the ordinance something that allows the zoning board or the Board of Adjustment to do that. And here it says the board is, this is UDR 47245D3H, and in appropriate cases, the board is authorized to vary the requirement of the zoning regulation or the ordinance. And in this case, the special exception doesn't require hardship. All it requires is that it's consistent with the purpose of the UDLR, and that is to ensure safe development and safety of the community, which this would not affect. It would be fine, and that it's not incompatible with adjoining properties. And as I mentioned before, all of the adjoining properties are single-family homes. And finally, there's a sort of a definitional argument under where the side lot lines should be at substantially right angles or radial. If you go back and look, and I suppose it depends on what is a side lot line, but these side lot lines are all perpendicular to this street, and these side lot lines are all perpendicular to this street. And it doesn't say which street or a street or the same street. Had it said boundaries, then maybe you could say that that's the side lot line, and maybe that's what it means. But it doesn't say boundaries. So there's a definitional argument that says, well, these are all at right angles to this street, perpendicular, and these are all, or these two are at right angles to this street. So it meets the requirement of the statute. With that, I will take any questions that the board may have.
We're going to hold off on some questions until we hear from the public, and then we will come back and we will have some questions for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this matter? Okay, if so, and you've been sworn in, please step up to the microphone and state your name and your address. Whoever wants to go first is fine. Whoever wants to go second is fine as well. Okay. And I'm sorry, sir, we need you to speak in the microphone because that's how it's picked up and recorded.
My name's Jesse Alvarez. I live at 2921 Gertrudis Place. I'm adjacent to the properties that he's trying to develop. And I'm here to argue that this should be denied, this request. This was created, this purchase of this flag lot was done subsequent to his initial purchase of the two lots. He then purchased this, so he created this. They argue that it's not going to adversely impact the surrounding neighborhood. It definitely will. This neighborhood between Southwest 17th Street and Southwest 19th Street is severely impacted by flooding on 30th Terrace. The flooding there is significant. I have photos from April of 2023. It was not just Edgewood that flooded, but this neighborhood flooded. And I'll pass around these photos so you can see that even the home 1818 flooded, and this is all the debris out in front of 1818. Every house on 30th Terrace flooded. This is all the debris in front of 1754, which is the property adjacent to where they're developing the flag lot right here. This house flooded. This house flooded. This house flooded. All the homes on Southwest 17th Place flooded. And here's photos that show the flooding in that area. This is Southwest 17th Place, underwater. They have to pump that water out whenever it rains. And this is not just from April 2023. In June of 2024, this is in front of my house that's affected by the flooding. That's my nephew on a boat on our street.
By the way, sir, we will need a copy of them, and we're going to need to keep them afterwards.
This is Gertrudis Place, which is on the map. It's the road's right here. This is June of 2024, completely underwater. I had to take my cars and park them before this rain event at the airport so they wouldn't get flooded. During the flood of April 2023, I had 4 cars affected by flooding. 2 were completely totaled. The water was up to the door handle. The flooding in this area was helped by these 2 properties which H&M purchased. But there were low-lying areas. They filled with water. They worked as a reservoir, but the flooding was still bad. Upon his purchase of the property, he dumped, I don't know, seemed like 50 truckloads of land in those 2 lots. I don't know why he says he can't access it. He goes down 17th Place daily, and he dumped, I'm going to guess, 50 trucks of landfill into those 2 properties. Didn't do any demucking, hasn't done any bore testing that I'm aware of. And when he dumped all that land in there and now he wants to build homes, the flooding in this surrounding area is going to be worse than ever. So I argue that it's definitely going to adversely impact the neighborhood, and I believe this is something that he's created of his own doing. He failed to do his due diligence. I'm glad to hear that 2 of you have gone on site. If you've gone on site, you see that proposing to build access between 2 homes is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I have a picture of the 2 homes, and there's no way they could safely, he says they have safely they can access that property. They can't. That's 1818. They're gonna put a road right next to that. They have two French
You can hand us the
doors.
photos in the meantime, so this way we can see them and pass them around.
Two French doors that open to where they're gonna put the proposed road. And this is the latest that they're doing. This is a picture from today. I don't know if they have a permit for this, but the reason we're here is because they made a deal with 1818. They purchased this piece. They purchased it to create a flag lot. They created this scenario. Now they want to do a flag lot. And to do that, they offered to build this guy a pool. And they've already started construction on that pool. I don't know if they have a permit for that. Everything else he's done without a permit. He didn't get a permit to dump all that fill in there. And I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know. Maybe he has a permit, but I wouldn't be surprised he doesn't have a permit. But the application that you guys are considering today has no mention of this pool. I don't know if it makes you aware of the home and how it's situated.
And sir, I'm going to ask you to wrap up because we're over time.
And that's all I got to say. I appreciate your time, and I'm glad
Okay.
you guys went out there. If you could go out and look again, you can see how it affects
And I need the
two
rest of those
homes.
pictures as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there somebody else that wishes to speak? Anybody else from the public? Don't be shy. Come on up.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Please state your name and your property address.
Yes, my name is Lisa Alvarez. My property address is 2921 Gertrudis Place, related to the last speaker. My point I wanted to make today is that that the paperwork should be rejected on its face because the spouse of the owner has notarized the documents. She notarized the agent authorization form, the affidavit of posting signs, and the BOA application form have all been notarized by the spouse, and also a person who has a financial interest in this matter, which is all in contravention of Florida statutes and the notary laws of Florida. So on its face, this should be rejected. Aside from that, I would go also to the issue that he acquired, the H&M acquired this 20-foot strip of land from the property owner at 1818 Southwest 30th Terrace, which now creates a situation for that homeowner that maybe nobody is aware of, and that now they are a zero lot line development. They no longer meet the setback requirements for a side yard street of 15 feet. There is no way 15 feet from the house to that 20-foot strip of land that they sold. And in addition to the zero lot line developments, there can be no openings on that side street. There are French doors and a patio. They don't meet the setback requirements. So I would respectfully request that you all deny this variance for those reasons. In addition, we'll leave it at that. I would just request that you deny it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else?
My name is Martin Kessler. I live at 1790 Southwest 30th Terrace. Basically, I have the property right here on the other side of this thing. North side, yes.
And Mark, if I could have you speak to the microphone because it has to
Okay.
record and go through.
You spoke about the 15-foot ordinance. That road is going to be about 14 and a half feet from my bedroom. And I'm going to be the one impacted by most of this because they're going to want to tear everything down. I'm not going to have a backyard anymore. And, you know, they're going to, people like this are going to start making complaint after code violation. And, you know, people put stuff in their backyard that you don't want visible, so you don't get a code violation. Nobody complains about it. But everything's going to be out in the wide open. I've got nowhere to go, nothing to hide. The flooding's going to be an issue because, you know, I've got two streets on either side of my road, my house, and you're going to kill my property value. The flooding's going to go bad. These people are not going to stop complaining about stuff. And I'm furious about this whole thing. I don't understand how they're able to build on this thing. It had a no-build clause for 99 years. So, I mean, you know, but I don't agree with this thing either. So, I mean, I really don't have a whole lot to say about this. I mean, but, you know, I mean, I don't think you should be allowed either. So, I mean, that's about all I've got to say. A lot of these people said a lot of things that I wanted to say. There's really no reason to repeat it, but that's my issue with this, because that road is going to be so close to my house, you know. And now I've got traffic, and I don't want it, you know. I don't think it's right. So I said my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
My name is Al Salsamendi. I wanted to bring up something that hasn't, I don't know if it's been thought or even mentioned. Recently, 2 years ago, let's see here. That home right there, and we live right here, so we're right adjacent to this, was sold as an Airbnb. So we have this 17 places of one lane road, and the amount of craziness we've had from this Airbnb in this peaceful little area that I purchased and my wife and I live and plan to retire has all of a sudden been turned into an upheaval in certain respects. We had as many as 90 people at a party in this little dead-end road, parked all out here on 30th Terrace, parked in here, going through the neighbor's lawn. It was unbelievable. We have concerns with that alone, not to mention the flooding and whatever else that was mentioned. But I'm particularly concerned about this Airbnb thing, and also concerned that even these new development homes have no guarantee that they won't, you know, they're going to be two similar buildings capable of holding quite a few. It's two-story homes. There's no guarantee that those won't turn into an Airbnb. I don't know how they can, and if it does, it would be total mayhem for this little quiet, peaceful road that is constituted a nice little walk for me every day with a landscape that shades that street. Even in the hottest, sunniest day, you can walk down that street. It's just beautiful. And so that would be something I would like to bring up for a concern is what do we do about something like that? It has just turned it upside down for us. My wife is literally anxious every time there's some crazy yelling out in the street now, people being dropped off, cars coming and going. I pull up to go in, and there's a car coming down our one-way street, which we only had two neighbors down at this end before. So that rarely ever happens. So that's my concern.
Thank you. Okay, this side of the room, we're good? Okay. Please come up. Okay. So hi, if you could just state your name and your property address.
Yeah, my name is Mariana Menendez. I'm in 1818, so the one that did the land exchange. And by the way, we do have permits for the pool. We've had two inspectors there today. I mean, honestly, I hear a lot about flooding, but there was a meeting yesterday at the middle school. We actually walked there about flooding because it's not just in our neighborhood, everywhere. We were all there. None of them were. So if it was really, and there was posters around the neighborhood, you know, like for the meeting. The city is, they're doing like plans, because I have been calling since I moved there 2020 for like 4 years trying to put complaints because the drains were not working. So yes, it is a low-lying area. My house was really severely flooded, but I don't think it has to do with the houses. It's more like just poor drainage. Number two, I don't know why they would be complaining because they have a similar setup in their house as the one that they're trying to build. I mean, I don't think that with the neighbors we should be like arguing back and forth about something. It is their land, so I don't see the issue. I already have it next door. I'm gonna have it behind. I don't see a reason for that. Why would you allow one person and not the other? It's just kind of, it's wrong. And then I also know, I love you, Jesus. I have a lot of respect for you, but I know that you tried purchasing the same property to build a house there, and you said it yourself. And they all live in the same place, by the way, so that's his son that was talking. Again, if there was really a concern, I don't know why he would have tried to purchase it before. There was like a different lock, I guess, I heard. And I don't know. I don't know what else. I'm sorry.
It's okay. If that's what you have to say, then.
And then, and I know that the other neighbors were complaining about like the land. I know that my fence was actually in, and they were using all of that strip of my fence. They were also taking like more to the back, so I believe they have a personal interest, maybe even retaliation out of this whole thing. I know that we've had several issues, like with the house that's right next, like right here, because of the noise and all that stuff. Like it's all cluttered up, like against the fence. The fence was being destroyed. To me, it sounds like a solution. There's going to be a new fence. Everything's going to be cleaned up. And there was also like a lot of mosquitoes. My husband actually caught dengue a couple years ago. We had to call the city several times because the lawn in the back was so like unkept. And the city has gone out like multiple times to fumigate. So that's another issue. There was like an unkept. I was trying to like clean up back there, and I actually like removed carcasses from like dead animals, which was disgusting. So nobody was keeping it before, and everyone around there, like all of the neighbors were also using it to like park their cars because the land has always been a little bit higher whenever there was like any kind of flooding. So they were using it like personally, and that's it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Dear Board, good evening. I wanted to present for you the people that couldn't come today, the other neighbors. We have about 18. Honey Levy, sorry.
And what is your address?
3061 Southwest 17th Street. Okay, we have about 18 neighbors that couldn't come today due to the holiday.
That's okay. I'm going to have you strictly speak in the microphone.
And
Thank you.
they actually wanted to reach out and show the support in the build. Another thing, this is a big event that the city pulled yesterday, public work about flooding issue. And interesting enough that none of them came yesterday to express their frustration with the flooding, but none of this is a ground to deny me back if we're going facing on the law and the issue in the property. Another I have here for the dear board, each person that speak today, his personal interest and the empty lot and how they parking and using my land, which I would like to pass some information to
Actually,
all of you.
probably best to start it in the front there, and then we'll pass it down.
So the first one will show how they using the land to park their car. The second one, which is their owner that's been using this land to run his business, tree pest control for many, many years. And I have to end this business, this illegal structure there that is unacceptable there. When I purchased the land, I say, no more, you gotta get out. So that's been over, so that's a personal thing against us probably. The other neighbor, we are in a lawsuit since they took over all this right here, this strip of land that I need. They planted a lot of plants, and they took, for my feet that I purchased, that I need every single feet of that. Right now I need permits to remove all this, to clean it up, and to fence this in order to make this a nicer driveway, a nice area. We have actually a jury trial on January 2025, so that's a personal, I think, thing that shouldn't be, but it will show here his car parking in my land, and when his guests and family using my land to park is okay. But when I need to turn this to my use, something that I purchased, that I've been scammed of, you know, I felt like I've been ripped. Like, this is a year that I haven't been sleeping. This is a huge financial thing that took a hit on my family. I wish I would know it. I would never get into something like that. I wanted just to be built, provide, like what we're doing in the city. We have a ton of business with the city of Fort Lauderdale. We're helping people to get into the house. We're helping people to do a lot of things that they need to. I wanted to develop, create something for us. And that's the obstacle that I'm facing right now, begging here for being a flag land that is so many other houses in here.
And I'm going to ask you to just wrap up because we're at time.
So, and I wanted to also share something that it's not right, because she doesn't know if I'm married to that person. She say, I notarize it. I am notarized it. I'm allowed to notarize it. I'm not married to him. So I'm allowed to notarize this. I didn't want to disclose this because it's not my personal business. It shouldn't be testified here. Unless you have a document that show I'm married, please share it with us.
Okay. Thank you. Excuse me. Please. I'm going to, oh, yes, sir.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Michael Pelleggi. I live in 1818 here. And I just wanted to just point out just a couple of things. One, I understand some of the concerns regarding the flooding. However, this is not a conversation about flooding. As has been pointed out in the past, concerns about flooding need to be dealt with the city. Fortify Lauderdale is an initiative that I'm sure you guys are aware of when it comes to it's a 10-year plan to try to figure out the flooding. My house, we lost everything. This is a conversation about whether or not this should happen to try to make it accessible for them to build the land that they rightfully bought. I understand that there's a lot of emotions. We're all neighbors. At the end of the day, we see each other. And so, I mean, I love you guys. I pray for you guys. Yes, there's a lot of conflict of interest in here. I think the neighbors have wrongfully used this lot. The pictures you have demonstrate that. I think that, there's also, spite and jealousy in regards to some of the reasons as to why, some of the neighbors would not want someone else to build in there. However, it needs to be noted that when someone does a new building, it needs to follow a code. That's why we're here. Part of the code, if there is a concern with flooding, that is addressed as part of the building. Several claims have been made about the distancing and stuff or permits, and I just want to point out that all of that is ad hominem. It's been attacking character back and forth. It's been arguments from ignorance, meaning they don't know what they don't know, and so they make a claim. You guys have access to the documents. You know that anything is being done with permits. Everything is being done rightfully. The exception to this rule, it's more than valid. It's sound, given that on the opposite side, the neighbors would not allow for an easement for them to be able to build. And so we, as being good neighbors, we figured out, okay, fine, let's figure something out, something that may work out for you guys. Obviously, this is not what we wanted. We liked our land, but we also understand the predicament they're caught in. And so, yes, it's okay. We can figure something out, and I think that's a solvable issue. We live on the way. We are there, and we will be just as much as the neighbor that was just speaking, Mr. Kessler, greatly affected by that. And we don't think we will be negatively affected, because if we're building one house or really in the backyard, that's it. It's just one house. And no one can control who the seller is. No one can control who the buyer is. All we can say is it makes absolutely no sense to try to say that the reason why this should not be allowed is for flooding, because flooding is a separate matter. And when they build, they will figure that out as part of the code. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody, and if you're going to speak it, as long as it's not about neighbor attacking neighbor, it's got to be specifically to the subject. So if you'd still like to speak on that, you're welcome to come back up. Then, it doesn't matter. That's not relevant. Thank you. Time for rebuttal. I'm sure you wanted some time for rebuttal, so please come up, and then the board will ask you some questions.
So briefly, there's been a lot of talk about flooding. Something that the board should know is that I think Mr. Alvarez alluded to this, but they will take pumps and pump water from their property onto the H&M's property, the property, this property. So the fact that
Please.
it happened means it happened. Now,
We need to be, listen, we need to be very civil and let him speak.
so they just admitted it happened.
Nobody admitted. No, hey, whoa.
So they have to make up their mind. They also park cars there to avoid the flooding. So they have to make up their mind. Do they park the cars as submarines? No, I don't think so. So that's one thing that the board should know. There was also, my understanding is also that all of the dimensional requirements are being met. That is, all set-offs are being met. In fact, H&M has submitted a general building permit. And in that permit, there are obviously going to be set-offs that are going to have to be abided by. The only thing that I'm aware of that H&M has to deal with are something about a sewer and this flag issue. The flooding issue was already taken care of by engineers. They have already submitted proper drainage in the building permit, and that was allowed, or at least that's been approved as far as the flooding is. So again, as other people have said, the advantages are many. There'll be a tax revenue advantage. The property values will go up as a nice single-family home will go up there. The use is exactly what it's zoned for. That is residential, single-family dwellings is one of the allowed uses. There won't be dead animals along with all the unsavory diseases, the mosquitoes, flies, whatever that brings in. There won't be the opportunity for vagrants. The property will be maintained, and there won't be the opportunity for overbrush and that sort of thing. So with that, I will turn it over to the board for questions of any of us.
Okay. So, does anybody have any questions of the applicant? Doug, I'll start with you.
Can you just explain Southwest 17th Place and why that does not work as access?
Okay. So Southwest 17th Place is a private road. It actually makes all of these properties here flag properties themselves, but it is a private road. So at any time, the owner, I think there's easements along this way. I think it's a 25-foot easement along here.
Okay, but speaking to the microphone still, I know you're trying to show us at the same time. Thank you.
I think that area is a 25-foot easement, if I remember correctly. Okay, so it's not a public road. It's not dedicated to the public. So the owners here who have the easement could put a gate on there any time. And so therefore it's not, we don't have, that's why I say we don't have permanent access. I know somebody said we can access it, but they can take that away tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, Pat?
I have a lot of questions, and some of them you may be able to answer, some of them the applicant might be able to answer. The flooding I don't think is particularly relevant, but I did want, the only part about that was not discussed was that because the construction on this house will have to meet the new FEMA elevations, I happen to have been to several of these Fort Lauderdale flood presentations, and the deputy director of Public Works made it very clear that for any new construction, only 1 inch of water had to be retained on site of the new construction, and that the people building the new construction were then allowed to donate, and she used the word donate, the balance of the water that goes onto their property to their neighbors. So you're building to this level, your neighbors are here, you retain 1 inch of water, the rest flows to your neighbors. So whatever flooding already exists out there on the surrounding properties is likely to get worse. But Having said that, I don't think that the issue is the flooding. The issue is, was there a hardship? And I think in the backup, Ms. Levy said there was an email, I think, to the city when the city asked her, had she done a survey, because they couldn't really respond to her until she did a survey. And her answer, based on what's in the package, was that she hadn't decided whether it was worth it or not. And I don't see, and I remember this being on the television when it was on the television. And I will get to a question, I promise. But my thought as an attorney who does title insurance was, did these people get a survey and did they get title insurance? Because we would not be here if they did those two things. And it appears to me, and maybe the applicant can answer that question, that they decided it wasn't worth it. I think they found out that maybe it was worth it. But when their whole application of why this is a hardship is because the city didn't tell them. It wasn't the city's job to tell them. And all of this due diligence that they supposedly did, and throwing the closing agent under the bus, saying that the closing agent told them that it was a buildable lot. I seriously doubt that. Because all you can say is you have a lot in a zoning district that permits development. The closing agent is not going to tell you whether that particular lot is developable. And if they had done a survey, they would have realized that the property had no access to a public right-of-way. So blaming the city for not telling them does not make a hardship. City didn't do this. Said that they own other lots in the adjacent area. And I don't know who subdivided this property to begin with, but if they have other lots that adjoin this, and that perhaps was their answer. And lastly, I'm concerned, and I agree with what you said, that they're throwing things out there and they don't have surveys themselves, so I don't know whether this is in fact the case. But the one woman said that now 1818 is non-conforming on their side setback. That may or may not be true, but it certainly would be something that I would want to know before I voted in favor of this or whatever, because I don't want to create a non-conforming lot on 1818, and when they go to sell this property and come back and ask us for a variance, say, well, we didn't create this hardship. I'm sort of shocked that they would have conveyed the flag before they knew whether they were getting a variance. I wouldn't have. I mean, I certainly would have conditioned any conveyance based on whether or not they got their variance approved, but I wasn't their lawyer. So basically, my question is, where's your hardship? If you're telling us that you did all this due diligence, it doesn't look like any due diligence was actually done. It's just sort of blaming the city after the fact for something that isn't their job. So if you could explain that.
I'll start with, I can't speak to 1818. I apologize, that's not who I represent. With respect to the due diligence that was done, H&M is a fledgling developer. This is really their first project.
Wait, but they purchased other property. They're basically saying they decided not to spend the money on title insurance or a survey. It's in her email.
No, I don't believe they've ever purchased any other property. I believe this is the first one. Or their home, okay. I can't hear, I'm sorry.
Ahmed Hamid. You can come up here, Dwayne, if you want. Oh, Hertz works.
I just want to remind Chair that we would need everyone who is testifying to be on the record, so they need to be on the microphone. On occasion, we've had individuals speaking from the audience, which is not appropriate. Anyone who's speaking and needs to add to testimony, this is a quasi-judicial hearing, will need to be on the record, will need to approach the microphone when they make their statements.
Okay. Thank you, Dwayne. I'm going to bring it back to you, sir.
Yes. So the due diligence that was done, they had professionals that were helping them, the closing agent, their realtor, the seller's realtor was had advertised the property as build to suit or suit to build. I can't remember exactly which way it was, but essentially that it was buildable. The seller represented that it was buildable. In fact, in the contract, it says there's guaranteed ingress or warranted ingress and egress. So to say there was no due diligence, I think is probably going a little too far. There was. With respect to a survey, it wasn't that they said the survey wasn't worth it. However, before they went to the expense of getting a survey, they wanted to know that that the survey would mean something. Not that it wasn't worth it, but that it would mean something. And in doing that, what they did was they went to the city after the email you're talking about. So I think that email was before September 11th, because that's when they went to the city. So it was sometime before that the city asked for a survey. Instead of getting a survey, they went to the city and they talked to them. And that was on September 11th. And what the city did then was the city showed them the ordinance. It was residential 6.85B, and pulled them and showed them all of the uses. So they knew what the uses were. So they knew that it was, for example, single-family development. I think there was other uses like religious facility or some others. I don't recall all of them offhand. But then, so on September 11th, they went and the city showed them the ordinance, but the city didn't show them the other part of the ULDR, and that is these sections. And these sections do apply through the annex of Melrose Place and I think it's Riverdale Road. So these sections do apply. The subdivision sections, the 4724, the subdivision sections. And the city, although showing them part of the ULDR and how it would work, and leading them to believe it would be buildable, failed to show them these sections, and in particular, this one, or I'm sorry, the one prior G. So all of these numbers and then G, which says that the property has to abut a road. So at that point, they thought that, and I think reasonably so, thought that it was buildable since seller's realtor, buyer, their realtor, the closing agent did represent to them at the closing, is my understanding, that it was buildable.
You're testifying, you weren't at the closing, were you?
No, but I can.
Okay. And I don't want to argue with you.
Okay.
But what you're saying is counter to what their application says. The application says that we visited the city office and spoke with the front desk representative. So the person sitting at the front desk is not a person who I would rely on. But, so this due diligence that supposedly was done, I don't see it.
I'm going to let Ms. Levy speak to that.
Hey, me again, Honey Levy. So after I sent the email to the zoning department, we came right into this door, went to the planning department, and sat down with the zoning person. And it's September 11, and which is in a stamp of the city and the time that we was there. And actually, other people was outside, the landscaping people. We spent quite a time with the zoning department going over everything in the zoning and trying to make sure that this land is developable. And after that decision, immediately I called to the closing agency and I told them, yeah, I've been in the zoning department, and I called to the realtor and I say, yeah, we're good to go because they say there is no issue with the land. And we based our decisions based on this conversation. After they didn't answer to the email, we didn't just sit down and wait for them to answer. We walked in this door. And the thing is, when you sit with city official, you believe that what they tell you is true. Like, how can it not be true? That's what I believe. I didn't have one doubt in my mind that this could even happen. If I sit down and they tell me this good to go, I believe that. So that was my problem. And we did a survey. The survey was a boundary survey from my understanding, and that's why we couldn't understand if there is any easement. There is, I guess, a different survey that we needed to order.
Was your survey part of the original survey? Was that part of the application?
The original, no, that's been many other surveys that had been done after we bought the land and did a lot of other.
Is there further questions, Pat?
I'm done for the moment.
Okay. Fred, I know your light's not on, but I know you have questions.
I guess my question was to Bert. Bert, what is the side yard setback in this zoning? And I guess
Are
what
you talking about property to property side yard setback? Are you talking?
my question concerns the house that is on 30th Terrace, which is immediately adjacent to where this flag lot extension runs out.
Which one?
It's the house that has, it's their house.
Okay, 1818. So I'm looking, they submitted a pool permit. So I pulled up the survey that was submitted with the pool permit, and it has to be a current survey because that's what's required. And looking to the north where they put in that roadway, it's not road, it's a driveway, it's a private drive. They've got, at the front of the house, going north, they've got 11.76. At the rear corner, they've got 8.6. This is annexed area, so the side yard setbacks are 7.5. So they comply with the setbacks. The only thing that I see that's more likely is an issue is they've got some flat work paving that is required to be 2.5 feet back, and it probably does encroach, but it's just paving. The house itself looks like it's fine.
Okay, so if we were to approve this, the setback, their house meets the setback from the south edge of this flag property line.
This house, going to the northern property line, which abuts the private drive, meets the 7.5 foot setback.
Sorry, Bert, can you tell whether the property, the gentleman in the red shirt said he owned it, I think it's to the north.
I don't know anything about the north property.
So we don't know whether that's creating any problem there.
I don't.
Okay.
You'd have to go one microphone, Doug.
Sorry, but with that question, you didn't sell this driveway is strictly on your neighbor's property, right? What you bought. So okay, I'll ask you. The driveway, this flag part that was purchased from the house below. The house above.
Yes. I'm being told that that's correct.
Okay, so nothing has changed for your house, the house above, nothing has changed. That property line is the same as it's been.
Okay. Anybody else? Mohammed, you're lit? Okay. Okay. Any other questions before I close the public hearing? Okay. Thank you, sir. In that case, I close the public hearing. I bring it back to the board for any discussion and a vote. And microphone, Bob, if you're going to speak out loud.
Is there any questions still out, or
just close the public hearing? Okay.
And one thing I didn't quite get with the presentations, and maybe I isn't offended of what I guess they want relief from us, which as a starting point with the city, is that what the issue is, and is that part of our duties officially? I wasn't aware we really had a role in this, but I guess we do. But I want to make sure.
Well, Dwayne's ready for an answer.
Sure. So the city code, the ULDR, has regulations with regards to the subdivision of land. In this particular case, and here's where the confusion comes in most cases, the property appraiser will subdivide land for the purposes of property ownership to any size that you want. And that doesn't matter. We don't interfere with property ownership. We just regulate how you use land. So individuals have often gone to the property appraisers, subdivided land, got new folio numbers, and then discovered that they no longer have a buildable lot. And so our subdivision regulation says if you're subdividing land, they have to abide by certain requirements. And this particular subdivision of the property does not meet one of the requirements in our code with regards to how the side yards are configured as it relates to the roadway. And so they are requesting a variance, and it was their burden to demonstrate to you that they have a hardship that's not self-created in this case that created this situation where they have a subdivided lot on which they cannot develop in accordance with our code. But if you grant them the variance to this particular code section, they would be able to proceed with the development of the site.
They would.
That's correct.
And for
I mean, assuming they meet all of the other permitting requirements.
And for one reason I'm asking that is my day job is I'm employed by the Broward County Property Appraiser's Office. I have nothing to do with issuing folio numbers or subdividing property. I might assist taxpayers in pushing that one point of the office, but I have nothing to do with that. I am familiar with your issue, sort of. So that's what I wanted some clarification on, exactly what a role is and how to proceed.
Thank you, Bob. So, Doug?
Sorry, I don't want to be thick, but I am. Can you just go over again is what part of this are they not, if they own that, they own the whole lot, what are we, what's the problem here? What are we approving?
So the ULDR requires that when lots are divided, that if this is the roadway, this is the front property line, the side yard property lines are they need to be substantially perpendicular. So what's happened here, if you look at it, they've come out here, which is perpendicular, then they go parallel. And then they go back to perpendicular. On the bottom side, they come back perpendicular, then they go parallel. So if you look at that and you turn it this way, it looks like a double flag, which is contrary to that code section that we've put in there. So flag lots aren't permitted by the code, and that's the variance that you're gonna either deny or approve.
So if the lower part of that driveway went straight across and there was no bit, that would be okay. So the fact that
If
he
you
goes
look at the
both
lots
ways.
to the north, say the two rows of houses to the north, and assume that above that picture is a roadway, you see how those lines, those side yards, are perpendicular to that northern horizontal. That's what a substantially perpendicular to the front yard means. Whereas if you look at the red, you can see that it's kind of drawn all over the place, and it resembles a flag if you look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Bob.
And I guess what exactly are they want relief, obviously, to do due diligence in what the ownership and their belief of what the property is. But what exactly are they proposing to do?
You may want to have them answer that question.
Okay.
Well, in that case, let me, if that's the case, I'll reopen the public hearing.
I mean, I didn't hear that in their presentation, really.
You don't need to reopen the public hearing, but you can request that the applicant or their representative come forward to answer that question.
Well, thank you. That saves time again.
Well, they submitted the plans for a house. It's in the package.
Just a house. Is it a road connected to? I mean,
A driveway that goes to the road.
An access road.
A driveway.
So what I can tell you is that yes, they've submitted a permit for a single-family house.
Okay.
Okay. In that case, that clarified that.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions, statements of staff or the board?
Yep.
Go ahead, Fred.
I have a question.
Okay,
What impact
Milton,
will
if you could bring the microphone down too.
What impact could this have if we made a decision for this on any future type of situation like this? I mean, once we put it out there and we affirmed this is what we wanted to do, what impact could that have?
So I've always taken the position that this board doesn't set precedents, but of course, other applicants can look at your past votes and look at the record and make similar arguments, which would give them some ability to appeal your decision based on the contrary, you going against a similar arguments made in the future. So, you know, in the case of granting something like this and a future applicant were to come forward and make the same argument, again, your approval of this would not set precedents, but if someone in the future were to be denied and making an identical argument, you know, that's something that they can raise in a challenge.
Mr. Chairman?
Goodbye.
I do have one question that I didn't, it's actually a question, that I didn't think of before, and perhaps the attorney can answer it. If that's okay.
That'd be great.
Does
Sir,
that have
if
to
you
be in the
come
public record,
back
or can I
up,
just ask a
and
question?
Fred, I'll get you next.
No, that's fine. You can
Okay.
ask.
They're suing the person who sold them this property, and they're suing the real estate agent and everybody else that they could, you know, think of. Are you handling that for them? I am not. Okay. Are you familiar with it?
Superficially.
Okay.
Sir, your microphone's off.
Because I'm just wondering, is this...
Superficially, I've read the complaint.
Okay. Yeah, so have I. So if we grant this variance, that isn't necessarily going to stop their litigation against... Isn't there a possibility that they're going to double dip on this?
No. First of all, this isn't for damages, I don't believe.
Well, I thought it was for damages and rescission.
The suit is. The hearing
No,
here.
no, I understand. The lawsuit, I think, is damages and rescission.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So if they get the variance, there's no reason to go forward with that litigation, but for the fact that they may still want damages because it's cost them a bunch of money to figure this out.
If I were representing them, that would be what I would do, but I don't know. I don't want to speak. I don't want to speak for the other lawyers. I don't.
Okay,
think
so it's possible that they could get what they want from us plus get what they want in the litigation.
I will. As
Okay,
anything's possible, I would have to say, but yes.
Okay, Fred?
I got two questions. The simplest one is...
I'm sorry, is this for me?
Is this of the applicant?
No, this is of the
Okay.
staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see on the bold photograph that we're looking at that Southwest 17th Place looks like it really is a dedicated street. And I heard from the public that it was a private street. It also has a Broward County sign that says Southwest 17th Place. So I just want to make certain that what we're hearing from the public is that that particular narrow street really is a private thoroughfare and has no status with Broward County.
So I can confirm that as we were having this hearing, I looked up the section at the Broward County right-of-way map section, and it provides a identification of the private easement. For the record, on the section map of section 17, township 50, range 42, it's listed in the southwest quarter as reference FF, and the easement is dedicated in book 5486, page 541, and it is designated as private.
Great answer. Okay, secondly, are they not re-subdividing this larger parcel?
Yes.
So that when they go to re-subdivide a larger parcel, they had to know that it did not meet the requirements of the section that they're appealing, other than to create this flag leg.
They testified of something different. As I mentioned earlier, the Broward County Property Appraiser allows folks to subdivide and get a folio numbers for parcels. The applicant has indicated on the record that they had some conversation with some unidentified individual in these offices, and I'm not sure. I don't know what the details of those conversations are. But as Member Rathburn has pointed out, anyone who does their due diligence would have, as you stated, figured out that, in terms of subdividing properties, that there are regulations in place for the ability to create buildable lots, to subdivide for buildable lots.
If I
Another
could
good
interject-
answer. Good answer. Thank
If
you.
I could interject too, our staff that deals with the folio numbers and those type of things, they're not versed on county or city regulations and zoning. It's an administrative function. You come in and have the owner's permission to.
That's
do
correct,
things, we do it.
and
Make
that
you
distinction is not readily recognized by most people. So that's why I want to
Right.
stress the difference between subdividing for buildable lots versus just the subdividing of property.
Right.
For tax purposes.
Yeah, I have a question for Dwayne, actually. Did the easement that they're referring to, that was never part of the package? Because that would be an odd easement if it is a private roadway easement and they're specifically precluded from it because they abut it. So did anybody ever give us a copy of that easement?
I have not seen it submitted as part of this
doesn't
package.
that sort of make sense? If the easement continues further down that sort of line there, if they front on the easement, did anybody look at the easement? Did you look at it? Did anyone?
Sure, come back up. Think of it as sit-ups.
I left it on.
I mean, from the survey, the easement abuts the this property, so it would be extremely strange if, for some reason, the easement says everybody else but these people get to use it.
My understanding is that the easement is 25 feet, but that little road is all on their property. So it does. So while H&M property does abut that road, it's not part of the easement. The easement extends to the line of H&M's property line. It doesn't go into H&M's property line, so H&M doesn't have any
Right,
access.
but if you're adjacent to a driveway easement, what does the language of the easement say? It has to say that this easement is for ingress and egress to certain lots. Did it exclude this lot?
It does.
Oh, you have to speak on the. If you know the answer. I'm sorry, and Mr. Chairman, you're in charge. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. If you just want to state your name again?
Yes, Al Salsamendi. So we're 2971 Southwest 17th Place, so we're right here. When we researched records on the easement and the language used for it, it stated that it was if I believe correctly, it was a dedicated easement, which is different than a standard easement. So it was a private dedicated easement. And there was a different access, like people have been able to get through non-dedicated easements with, exceptions have been made for people in those cases. But in this case, with a dedicated easement, it's strictly written in there. Now, we do own the property going out. And I'm sorry, I don't have it with me, but I remember reading that. So if any of you know a little bit more about that, there are two different types of easements.
Can staff give us some clarification and not somebody from the audience, please?
Dwayne, is that easement so old you can't pull it up in the public records?
The easement I'm referring to. So this easement is not identified on their survey. This is identified on the section map that's on the Broward County public records. The easement that's identified on the survey is identified by plat. And so we don't have, the applicant has not submitted that as part of the record. I know staff and other reviews have seen other easement documents and have weighed in on that, but those staff members aren't present, those documents aren't present, so we can't really elicit that testimony here tonight. It has not been entered into the record, and basically it would be hearsay that we'd be providing.
Okay. Anything else as far as the board? Then entertain a motion.
Pat,
This is the last motion of the year.
give us a hand.
Pat, bring us home.
If I could help you any, Pat,
Go ahead, Milton.
I'm
Chair, go.
if we don't have the information that we need to make an informed decision, I don't know how we go forward with this.
Mr. Chair, I move a 30-day extension. Ask the staff to get that information.
Yes.
Members.
Extension to the next hearing.
Next hearing, correct. And any member that has specific information they'd like the staff to get a hold of is communicate that to the chair.
Is there any reason that could not be done, Dwayne?
So I would. So, just for clarification, the additional information that you're looking for is just a copy of the easements in question?
Yes, the easement and any other pertinent data. It's difficult for us to make an informed decision that impact the person, the applicant, and the people who have concerns about this without that information.
Yeah. If Chair, through Chair, if we can ask the applicant's counsel to come forward, and if I may ask.
Okay. Well, thank you for doing that with me, but please come back up. We're going to ask a question of you. We can have both of you come up there. It is.
Counsel, so in order for this to be approved, there needs to be a supermajority vote. What the board is indicating is that they've become aware of these easements, particularly of Southwest 17th Place, and would like to actually see the easements and be informed about that, and are proposing to defer this to the next meeting. Is that something that you and your client are open to, and would you be able to provide those easement documents?
Yeah, also as part of our permit, there is a condition on the permit that they put that these easements that we have on 17th Place, we are not part of this easement. They deny.
Actually, so what we're asking right now is, will we be able to, let's try this again. Are you willing to extend to the next meeting so this information could be gathered for us to be able to make a decision? Otherwise, we'll make a decision tonight, which could go either direction.
So what we're saying, counsel, is we can't rely upon the applicant's assertion that this is in the application. We're asking you to provide the documentation that shows it.
For clarification, is the question about whether or not the easement is a private easement or a public easement?
Whether or not your client has access to that easement, legal access to the easement, is really what the question is.
I've been denied.
But okay.
I've been denied.
And we understand, counsel, we understand that. They're recognizing that all we're hearing now is people that are testifying and making assumptions that your client doesn't have access, and your client saying they doesn't have access, the neighbor saying that your client doesn't have access, but the board would like to see the documents and are asking whether you're open to deferring this to another date rather than taking a vote on denial tonight.
Can Michael show?
Yes, we may have a copy of it here.
On your phone, it's not going to work. So basically, do you want to defer to next meeting to be able to provide that information, or do you want us to take a vote tonight?
Okay. We're gonna
Defer.
refer to the next meeting so
Thank you.
you guys can
Okay.
get the information.
For clarification, are we providing that, or are you?
We would
staff
like
is-
you to provide that to staff, please.
Okay.
So a copy of both easements, and you've mentioned that there's some document within the permit record also.
Correct. In the permit record,
you
I
would-
have a condition right now under
If you would
the.
submit that information to staff, please.
Okay.
So thank you. You agree to defer if we so choose. So Bob, did you want to? Yeah, I'll let you get with staff afterwards for the very specifics.
No,
Or is you still?
Just so my clients know, can you guess or provide the date of the next meeting?
Oh, okay.
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 January 8th.
We're going to get it from the staff. That's okay. Thank you.
Okay. So,
if,
thank you.
If the board would take an action to defer the item,
We're getting to there.
All right, thank you.
What date do you need the information? I'm going to leave it to Bob or Milton. Do you want to do that? You started off. When you started
Go,
off?
Milton.
Milton, go for it.
Before the
Make a motion to defer
that we
until the
defer
next
to January.
So,
meeting.
Chair, I just want to clarify, because the applicant is here, we need the information with us before the 20th of December to put it on the agenda so that it advertised, go back. So I would just want to make sure before this.
No. We have to publicly announce it.
And we provide it to the board.
Bring it back to the board when they provide the information.
Yes, and just want to make sure that December 20th is our deadline. If that passes, we have to pull it back from the agenda. It will go to the February meeting then. Just to be clear. Thank you.
Should the motion say that? It's just going to come back to the next.
We don't have a motion yet.
That's why I want to make sure that when Milton does this.
If you want it conditioned as Mohammed just stated, yes, the motion should state it as stated as such.
What was that?
Okay, you good?
Yeah.
So my understanding is a desire to defer this item to the next meeting, conditioned upon the applicant providing staff all of the required documents by December 20th.
Okay, so
Well, that's deadly if they don't do it.
Okay, so Milton? Well, you actually have to state along that line. Dwayne can't make a motion. He can't make a motion.
I'll do it.
Okay, Bob, you're going to do it?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we defer this item to the January meeting and making sure that the presenters tonight, the applicants, that's the correct phrase, have a December 20th deadline to approach city staff and provide all necessary documents to them. If that deadline is not met, this will be deferred another month, if not resolved.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Okay, microphone, Milton.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Jamie?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Ms. Ratburn? Mr. Stressock?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
And Chair Elfman?
Yes.
Pass 7-0.
Okay. Thank you all. Is there any communication to the City Commission? Milton, Fred, anybody? No? Is there anything for the good of the city?
At great risk, and with the board's indulgence, I would like to pursue a response I got from the Deputy Director of Development as it regarded the request from at least 2 members of this board for the DRC comments on the Marina 32 site. And his response was that if this board wants that information, it should have been couched as a motion and a positive vote, or that if anyone on the board wanted the information, you'd have to go to the public records request. So I was in great interest with what we just talked about, because it sounded like the board was requesting from staff to do something, but there wasn't a motion or a vote to ask staff formally about that request. So let me go on. We recognize, and Dwayne and I have been around the horn on this one, that each of the board members generally is supposed to go look at the site that is under consideration. And on the marina site, at least a couple of us went and looked at the property that the applicant had and went around and looked on the marina site. And in doing so, it was obvious from our discussion that we were all aware, and that was confirmed by the photographs of the applicant, that the lighting that was provided by the marina is in the buffer yard, and per their photographs that they provided us that I submitted to the staff, that lighting does not meet the requirements of community compatibility for glare, or the fact that you can see the light source from the private property. Secondly, and during the look of the property, I came across the fact that there's almost 300 feet of buffer yard that is missing and was never landscaped on the south end of the marina complex. I think, and the director of DSD said, there are ramifications and solutions when we find that there are mistakes that have been made, or the fact that something wasn't built properly. It goes to code enforcement. And I can tell you right now, as I sit here, this is not a code enforcement problem. It has to do with the fact that the people that developed the marina complex did not meet the requirements of the community compatibility, unless there is something in the DRC comments that said they didn't have to meet the glare requirements of the lighting, nor did they have to do the 300 feet of buffer yard on the south end, which affects 7 other residential properties. I don't know what the answer is. I told the director, I said, now that you know, I would like to know how you're going to deal with the fact that it is obvious there's been mistakes made. And I questioned 2 other things. Number one, the landscape issue of part of the community compatibility says that the landscaping that's installed has to be a heavily vegetated mass of landscaping. And I questioned with my email to the director how a 40-foot royal palm that's planted 5 feet from the property line meets the heavy vegetated requirement of community compatibility. And lastly, as a landscape architect, I have to tell you, I am particularly cued into the fact that in the buffer yard, the engineering department required a drainage swale, and that when the swale was built and the water runs into it off the parking lot, it erodes all of the soil from around all of the trees and the live oaks, and the planting against the fence has all of the roots are exposed. So I don't know, number one, why this board has to formally request information and has to have a vote, which we didn't just do on this last item tonight. I don't understand why we can't access the DRC comments, because I wanted to know if the DRC comments gave the latitude to the developer not to include the buffer yard. And if it didn't, then they didn't build it, and that's a violation of the building code. So I don't know where we go from here. Dwayne, you're probably going to make all kinds of comments, but I have never, in 35 years of serving on the Planning and Zoning Board and the Board of Adjustment, come up with the development of a property that affected something that we had to vote on. Those kids that we approved the variance, 6 variances, were only trying to protect their property from what I call a real rogue development that did not meet the criteria of the community compatibility issues.
So that was for the good of the city. Do you need to comment, or are we good?
I think for the sake of providing clarity, so I think there's
two different issues, the issue of communications from the board and whether or not the board has the opportunity to direct staff, which I'll address later, and the responsibilities and duties of the Board of Adjustment. So you're a quasi-judicial body, and you have been given pretty much just 4 powers and duties within the ULDR, section 47-33.2. And those are dealing with appeals of interpretations. Those are dealing with special exceptions. Those are dealing with variance applications. And so as a finder of fact, what we advise you in the quasi-judicial setting is that you can't taint the process, that you are only supposed to consider the information that's brought before you in the quasi-judicial hearing. And if you have obtained information elsewhere, you disclose that. That's why we do the disclosures before you have the hearing. That is the limited purpose of the Planning and Zoning Board. So in terms, Board of Adjustment, correct. The Planning and Zoning Board has more discretion to investigate certain matters like that. In terms of the hearing on that Cheeky Hut and the impact of the neighboring property, what I was advising is that as concerned citizens are informed, you're a little bit more informed than most citizens, that you have noticed this as an issue resulting in a case that came before you in which you granted a variance to kind of deal with that use. But the board, even if we were to provide you with that information, there is no recourse, there's no action that the Board of Adjustment can do on those matters because it's outside of the purview of the Board of Adjustment. And so that was the one issue that I was trying to communicate. In terms of requesting information from staff, that's why, at least, and I guess that's probably lost in the many emails that you had, and the communication that I've had with staff was direct you towards the private side because it's outside of the jurisdiction of the Board of Adjustment, if you can understand my point of view on that. The question of having the board as a whole vote on an item, which is what you did tonight. You actually voted to defer pending the applicant providing more information. And so the actions that you mandate as a board, you do as a board. But as in the case previously, also involving Cheekies, you asked me to look into the whole Seminole reservation and their regulations. I didn't require a vote for that. I went ahead and I contacted both the Seminole and the Miccosukee tribes and got back to you because I thought it was pertinent to what the board has. So I hope that provides clarity on that. I can speak with the acting director and see if we can provide a resolution, but I don't see where, even if we provide you with the information, where this board has a function in redressing that. It is something that is more appropriate for the Planning and Zoning Board, but it is outside of the jurisdiction of the Board of Adjustment.
Thank you for your response. With that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. I will just speak to D. Wayne privately.